Hey guys, it's Jasmine, and today we're going to make a holiday wreath bread. This is a very festive bread that you can use for pretty much any holiday, and we're going to use a different method of making bread today, which makes it really nice and soft, and can last longer than most regular breads. This has a very pretty finish, so let's get started. For the ingredients for the starter, you will need 6 grams of white sugar, 15 grams of all-purpose flour, and 50 grams of milk. For the dough, you will need 400 grams of all-purpose flour, 50 grams of white sugar, 5 grams of yeast, 1 egg, 160 grams of milk, 35 grams of oil, a pinch of salt, some cocoa powder, and some egg wash. And for the toppings, you will need some cranberries, pecans, and slivered almonds. Today, we're going to start off a little bit different. So first, we're going to mix together the milk, sugar, and the flour in a saucepan, and then we're going to cook it on the stove until it becomes a thick paste. Then we're going to let it cool down in the fridge for a couple of hours, and then it is ready to use. We're basically making a starter for the bread that again makes it really nice and soft and can last longer than most regular bread. Prepare a small saucepan, and we're going to pour in the milk, the sugar, then the all-purpose flour. Then stir it until the flour has completely dissolved into the milk and there are no more lumps. Turn the heat onto medium-low, put the saucepan right over, and then just keep stirring while you're cooking this mixture until it becomes thick. You can see it's starting to thicken. Make sure you're stirring this so it doesn't clump up. It's been about a minute. I switched over to a spatula to make sure everything becomes nice and combined. And you can see this is now a nice and thick paste. You do not want to cook it any longer. As soon as it's ready, take it off the heat. Make sure you do not burn this either, so you want to make sure you keep stirring it. So now I'm going to take this off the heat. I've transferred this into a clean bowl. Now I'm going to cover it with plastic wrap and touching the dough so it does not dry out. And then I'm just going to store this into the fridge for it to chill for at least an hour, or you could do this ahead of time and chill it for overnight. This has been chilling in the fridge for about an hour. It is now nice and thick. You want to make sure you make this ahead of time so you don't have to wait on everything else for this to chill. You can see it is now nice and thick. It has become slightly more elastic. You should be able to feel it. So I'm just going to set this aside while I work on everything else. Now we can work on the yeast mixture. So I have some warm milk here, about 110 degrees Fahrenheit. Pour the milk into a bowl. Sprinkle over the yeast. And then we're just going to let this sit until it is nice and foamy on top. While we're waiting for the yeast to activate, we're going to briefly mix together our dry ingredients. So in a bowl, I already have some all-purpose flour. I'm going to mix in a little bit of cocoa powder here today because I want to make a chocolate-flavored bread, which also gives this wreath a really nice color. But if you don't want to add it in, you could just leave it out. Then also add in the white sugar and the salt. Now I'm just going to pour this into a stand mixer bowl with a hook attachment. If you don't have a stand mixer, you could also just do this by hand in a big bowl. The yeast is activated, so now I'm just going to add it into the dry ingredients. You can see it's really nice and foamy. Now crack in the egg. And then add in the starter dough that we made before. Now just start kneading. Once the dough starts to come together, add in the oil. I've prepared a big bowl which I'm going to rise the dough in later on, and I'm going to brush in some oil to make sure the dough does not stick. You can also use non-stick cooking spray if you have any. The dough has been kneading for around 10 minutes. It has now formed a nice smooth dough. If you feel like the dough is too dry, you can add a little bit of milk. And if it's too wet, you can add a little bit of flour. So I'm just going to form this into a ball. And I'm going to cover it with this lid that I have to make sure, again, it doesn't dry out. If you don't have this, you could also use plastic wrap. So now we're going to place this somewhere warm for it to rise for about an hour or so until it has doubled in size. And the amount of time that it needs to rise will depend on the temperature of where you put it. It's been an hour, the dough has now doubled in size, so we can start to shape it. I'm going to be working on my counter tray. I make sure it's nice and clean. First, I'm going to sprinkle on some flour to make sure the dough does not stick. You can see the dough has lots of air in it. I'm just going to press it down slightly to release the air. First, divide the dough in half because we're going to be braiding 2 braids. Place half of it aside. And then we're going to cut this one into 3 equal pieces to form the braid. I'm going to form it into a ball. This is going to make the next step easier. And then do the same with the other half. I'm going to roll each piece into a long snake so we could braid it. I like to sort of pull while roll at the same time. Try to make each snake the same thickness so the braid is nice and even later. I've rolled out my dough into long snakes. They're about 18 inches each. Try to make each one about the same thickness. This way you have an even wreath. So now we can start to braid the braid. Set 3 snakes aside because we're going to be making 2 braids today, and then we're going to connect it to form one big wreath. So connect the ends of 3 snakes, just pinch it together. To braid the bread, take the one from the side, fold it into the middle, and then take the one from the other side and pull it into the middle again. And then basically just repeat this. And try to make this nice and tight. And the braid might look really small now, but it will rise up later and look much puffier. To the end of the braid, keep it open, and we're going to connect the other snakes, the other 3 snakes that we set aside earlier. We're going to just connect it to this braid. And the reason why we're doing it in 2 separate times is because if it's too long, it might stretch out too much and break while you're braiding the first half. Pinch the ends of the braid together so it's nice and tight. Once the braid is done, we're just going to connect the 2 ends to form a wreath. Pinch the ends together really nice and tightly, and if it's not pretty, don't worry about it. Later on you could cover it with a ribbon. That's your wreath. Once I've connected the ends of the braid and formed a wreath, I'm going to place this onto a pizza pan that I have brushed a little bit of oil on to make sure it does not stick. We're just going to transfer this right on. I like using a pizza pan for this because it has the perfect shape, and it also gives you a little guide to make a perfect circle. Make sure you're forming a perfect circle now. So once it's rised, it's in a perfect circle. Now we're going to place this somewhere warm for it to rise the second time until it has doubled in size. And the amount of time may vary depending on where you put it. And I'm just going to cover it with a damp towel to make sure the top of it does not dry out. You could also use plastic wrap if you like. The dough has been rising for about half an hour under the damp towel. You can see it has doubled in size. So now I'm just going to set this aside while I work on the egg wash that I'm going to brush on top. Egg wash is very simple to make, so basically crack an egg into the bowl. Then to the egg, add in about a tablespoon of milk. Mix it all together. Then just brush a light layer all over the bread. This will make the bread nice and shiny, give it a nice color, and make sure that the toppings that we're adding on later will stick. And make sure you do not forget the sides. I've brushed the egg wash all over the bread. Now I'm going to sprinkle on some of the sprinkles that I have prepared. So I have some cranberries here and some whole pecans. And I'm just going to place it on randomly, but you could put a pattern if you'd like to. Press it down slightly to make sure that the cranberries actually stick. And this is a good time to cover up those ends that we had to pinch together, the two braids. Now I'm going to place on some whole pecans. I also have some slivered almonds. Try to pick toppings different sizes. This gives it a nice variety. I've topped my toppings onto the bread, so now I'm going to bake this in the oven at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for around 20 minutes, or when you insert a toothpick into the center and nothing sticks. The bread has baked in the oven at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for 20 minutes. You can see it is browned nicely on top. When I inserted a toothpick into the center, nothing sticked when it came out. That means it is cooked completely. I transferred it onto a pretty serving platter. And since this is a holiday bread, you can use it for pretty much any holiday. Thanksgiving, Christmas, and the New Year's Eve. To make it even more festive, I made a bow out of ribbons to place on top of the bread, and I suggested to put it where the two braids connected off because that tends to be a little messy. So just place it right on top, which makes it even more festive and perfect for the holidays. This bread is really soft, softer than most other breads, and it can last a very long period of time as well. So I really hope you could try this out. Thanks for watching, and see you guys next time. Bye!